In order to accomplish our God-given destiny, we're going to have to go against the flow of this world system.
You are sons and daughters of the Most High God.
Let your light shine so that men may see your good works. We are to be the light in a dark world.
It says we will not all sleep, but we all be changed. And that word change means to alter, transform, or revolutionize.
These people rise up like a lioness, like a majestic lion rousing itself.
This powerful teaching by Lisei Bevere will awaken you to a life of fierce passion, dangerous prayer, stunning power, and teamed purpose.
There is nothing more dangerous than being in the presence of lions when they are fully awake.
Lisei's new message, Lioness Arising, reveals what it means to be a stunning representative of strength. Fiercely protect the young. Lend your voice to the silenced. Raise a collective roar that changes everything. Packed with remarkable insights from nature.
Lionesses live in the light and they hunt in the dark.
And a rich depth of biblical references to the lioness. Lioness Arising is a call for women to rise up in strength and numbers. This powerful teaching will change your world.
All right, session 5. I'm going to be talking about under the same mission. And I might get a little naughty in this session. I am going to open up with a lion and a lioness story. I got to learn all sorts of fun things about the lionesses. Do you know the lionesses actually own the land? They own a pride area, and they really are a group of related sisters, cousins, aunts, mothers, daughters, grandmothers, and they hold a territory in strength, and that is where they hunt, that is their boundaries, and then the lions fight over the right to rule over the pride of lionesses that hold the territory. And lionesses, they're all about protecting their young. And the term catty comes from lionesses pitting lions against each other to find out who is the strongest, because a lioness decides when she's going to mate. The lion doesn't decide when they're mating. It is the lionesses that say, hey, let's make this happen. And so they approach the lions, but they refuse to mate if they think their children are not safe. And so they want to know that they only mate with the strongest males, and that those males are going to protect their young and protect their territory from rogue lions. And there are rogue lions and there are alpha lions, and most the lion groups that come to fight to win the pride's abundance, because basically, if you remember the Lion King at all, it was the lionesses that brought all the food. To win that abundance, they're groups of either one lion if it's a small pride, or a group of related brothers. And it'll be 2 or 3, and they'll challenge the ruling lion, and if he is not strong enough to fight them off, they kill him. They kill him, or they run him off, and sometimes they will even kill any of the young males in the pride. And so a lot of times the lionesses will make sure that there's no challenge as long as they have children invested in. They're really all about their kids. That's really, the lionesses are all about legacy and land and domain and territory, and the lions just kind of roll in and roll out. They only last 2 to 3 years in the prime position, so obviously that's not Jesus. Jesus doesn't get to last just 2 to 3 years. He's forever and ever. But anyway, so there's just kind of the story. So lions wouldn't dream of doing life without lionesses, because the lionesses bring them all the bounty and all of the good, and they don't surround themselves with wimpy, weak, sickly, passive lionesses, because they understand the stronger the lioness, the stronger the legacy, the greater the territory they hold. And so they surround themselves with the strongest lionesses. Matter of fact, if a lion has strong, stunning, vibrant lionesses, he knows that makes him look better. And so he is all about establishing himself with strength. And he doesn't dominate the lionesses to establish his strength. He dominates the other males to establish his strength. He confronts and wins over the weaker males. He doesn't dominate the weaker women. He understands these women have not a weakness, they have a different strength. And so it's a different dynamic than what we might think. There's no reason to dominate when you've already won. When you've already had an open show of who you are and what you are capable of. And I think Jesus looks at us the same way. There is no need for us to dominate. When he has made an open show of our enemy and our former Lord, and he has spoiled him utterly and completely, all of us should understand the importance of sheltering under that kind of strength, that kind of provision, that kind of leadership. And when you know that somebody would give their life to protect you, to just be in your company, then there's also no need for him to have to dominate you, because you would submit to somebody that you know protects you. And it's interesting because the lion and the lioness are the only creatures that are sexually dimorphous. And before you think I'm smart, I had to look that up. Sexually dimorphous means di means two. It means there's two things that indicate their gender. You know, if you're out in the African plains and you see two giraffes, it's going to be, well, it's actually easy with giraffes because how tall they are, to figure out who's the female and the male. But most, like leopards, they look exactly the same. The male and the female, it's just if you get them right next to each other, you'll notice that the female's going to be a little bit smaller. Cheetahs, same thing. But the lions and the lionesses, it's a standout. Who is the male? And who is the female? Because the male has a mane, and that mane declares who he is. And the lioness has no mane, and that mane declares who she is. And so we need to understand that God isn't trying to blend the genders. He's saying, let's celebrate the differences of it. Because what makes the lion the standout makes him a horrible hunter, because they can see him everywhere. He can't sneak up on anything. And what makes the lioness not stand out makes her an excellent hunter, because she goes stealth and she can hide in the open. And I think we're in a season right now where God is hiding women in the open, and we're kind of just dropping in among things, and we're going to all pop up at the right time and be synchronized about that. And we're going to actually talk about that a little bit later in the next lesson. But they're just amazing. They're stunning. Now, when I was on the African plain, the guides that were there told us they were having a problem. There was two rogue lions that were not ruling a pride, that began to partner together, two male lions. They were not brothers, but they were killing the other males, and they were killing more than what they could eat. But they weren't letting anybody else eat the food. So what they would do is camp around a dead giraffe, and then when it started to rot, they'd move away, and then the hyenas were eating. But the lionesses and the lions that were young cubs were not eating, and they were terrified about what this dynamic was. See, the addition of women brings health, because it's not enough just to kill and eat too much. It's enough for everybody to have the share. And the lionesses, they give the lion the share first, but they also make sure that the cubs all get an equal chance to have food. And when I was thinking about these gender differences, I actually came across a magnificent book by Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and I can't remember what the book's called. I think it's Believe or something like that. But anyway, I figured anybody that had navigated the racial differences that he navigated in South Africa might have insight to navigating gender differences that we yet have in the body of Christ. And so I began to read some of his different things, and I thought this was a beautiful comment he said. He said, differences are not intended to separate, to alienate. We are different precisely in order to realize our need one for another. And it takes a healthy man and a healthy woman to say, I need you. It's not healthy for the men to say, I don't need the woman, and it's not healthy for the women to say, we don't need the men. That's not healthy. And healthy lions and lionesses and healthy males and females get it, that only together do they flourish. Oh yeah, we might be able to survive separately, but we don't want it to survive. We want to see a flourish dynamic in our life and in the legacies that we're setting up. So we need to admit our need for each other, and we need to acknowledge the strengths of each other. The alpha lion staffs his weaknesses. The rogue lions kill all that is strong so that they can dominate. If you are a true leader, you do not feel the need to dominate. You actually will empower. Jesus empowers us. It takes nobility to empower and surround yourself with strength. It is weak leaders that don't understand what they're actually building, that surround themselves with people they can dominate. So we need to begin to bring this dynamic together. And it was interesting. I told you how I talked about the gender thing, how I said, gender doesn't qualify or disqualify male and female, but virtue ultimately does. And I'm shortening that down. It was amazing to me. I was talking about leadership. Do you know that mired immediately down into a submission question? Do you know it came immediately into, are you saying you don't have to submit to your husband if you think you're more virtuous than him? Did I say husband? Did I say marriage? And I need to say, why is it? Why is it, hello, why is it anytime we talk about women being strong, it always goes into submission? What is that? So, why? Does anybody else experience that, or am I the only person that has people say that on their Facebook? Okay, all right, so it always mires down into a submission question. So let's break down what submission means. Submission. What about submarine? What does submarine mean? Under water. So what does submission mean? Under mission. There's lots of missions in life. And there's different missions in different seasons. When I was single, I had a mission in life that was different than the mission I had when I was married. I had a different mission in life when I started to be a mother that is different now than the mission, that now I'm not so much a parenting role, okay, but I'm also a grandparent. And so I'm switching between what it looks like to be parenting all the time, but I'll always be a parent, right? I'll always be a parent, I'll always be a mother. But the way that looked, the mission of parenting begins to change. It's gone from you make sure every single thing, then you start to train them, right? The parenting mission changes. And we need to have missions for our lives, missions for our marriage, missions for our children, mission for what God has for us. John's and my mission as parents is to raise sons that honor God, obey their parents, honor authority, have a mindset that embraces others, the compassionate mindset that honor women. I can't even tell you how many times I've sat in services with my kids and had to on purpose say, that's not right, we're gonna have to talk about that later. Because I have a mission that my boys will love women. Yeah. And nothing is gonna come into their life that is going to undermine that love of women, but also the love of men. I, being a mother of 4 boys, makes me realize how amazing men are. And so my mission is to add value to men and women, not only to women and not only to men, but for all. Submission in our marriage means, yes, John is ultimately the leader. Yes, he ultimately has responsibility. But we figured out a long time ago, we've been married 28 years, that we are smarter together than either of us are separately. Yeah. And John has learned when we have a mission that he takes the input from me and the input from him and other people. We love to involve other people in our mission, okay? Other people in that mission. People are smart. Let's get the smart people around us because we're not always smart. So let's get the people. But at the end of the day, he's gonna answer. But it would be stupid for him to not involve the family in the mission. And I just feel like 2 Corinthians 5, verses 19 through 20 captured our mission. So if you want a place to start your mission statement, this would be the verse. It says, God put the world square with himself through the Messiah, giving the world a fresh start by offering forgiveness of sins. God is giving us, you and me, this is a mission, giving us the task of telling everyone what he is doing. We're Christ's representative. Do you hear that theme? It keeps going. What he is doing, what he is doing. Not what they can't do. What he is doing. We're Christ's representative. God uses us, you and me, to persuade men and women to drop their differences and enter into God's work of making things right between them. God is always about making things right between people. We no longer represent what we think. We need to represent what God is doing. Yeah. Drop our opinions. I can't think of a better mission than to be God's representative. I can't think of a better honor. Honor. I mean, sometimes I'm on the planes and I think, what am I doing again? Am I actually traveling and telling people about the love of God? I'm actually telling people how amazing he is. I'm actually telling him that he has an incredible plan. This doesn't even seem right. But when you get involved with what God is doing, that's exciting. Yeah. It's an adventure. So the question arises, are we telling people what God is doing? Or are we too busy telling them what they can and cannot do? Because when you tell people what they can and cannot do, it gets very, very, very scary. Because you don't want to tell people they can't do something God's telling them to do. Because then you start crossing God. And so we need to be careful about crossing what God says. Is the gospel, now again, he says he wants us to persuade, right? Persuade men and women to drop their differences, whether it's churches split between each, whatever that is, okay? Whether it's marriage, it can be as close and intimate as marriage, it can be as far-reaching as nations, okay? But he says we're supposed to persuade them. So are we preaching a gospel that is persuasive and influential, or is it unconvincing and restrictive? I can't tell you how many times I'll be on the plane and people ask me what I do, and I tell them that I travel and preach the gospel and I give value to women, and they actually can't compute that Christianity gives value to women because they have heard something that is unconvincing and restricting. Right. Oh, Jesus came to forgive you and give you a new start, but guess what? You can't do this unless your head's covering you. You can't do this unless that. You can't do, and they're like, I totally couldn't buy into that. Right. So I'm unconvinced that you actually are free because you can't help me with this. So let's break down 1 Timothy 3, verses 1 through 10 in 1 minute. No, I'm just kidding. I have a little bit longer than that. Okay, leadership in the church. It says this is how it starts. If anyone, I'm reading this version and maybe another one, but 3 of them said if anyone, okay? If anyone wants to provide leadership in the church, good. But there are preconditions. And here's the preconditions. A leader must be well thought of, committed to his wife. And people are like, how can a woman be committed to her wife? Well, it actually in the other one says the husband of one wife. See, back then, men married more than one wife. And they didn't want men that were married to multiple wives to be leaders. But they didn't have to say that to the women, because the women didn't marry multiple husbands. Lord Jesus, you all know that would be a challenge. Okay, so he said, cool and collected, accessible, hospitable. He must know what he's talking about and not be over fond of wine. Not pushy, but gentle. Not thin-skinned, not money-hungry. He must handle his own affairs well, attentive to his own children, and having their respect. For if someone is unable to handle his own affairs, how can he take care of God's house? He must not be a new believer, lest the position go to his head and the devil trip him up. Outsiders must think well of him, or else the devil will figure out a way to lure him into a trap. The same goes for those who want to be servants in the church. Serious, not deceitful, not too free with the bottle, not in it for what they can get out of it. They must be reverent before the mystery of faith, not using their position to try to run things. Let them prove themselves first. If they show they can do it, take them on. And then it says, no exceptions are to be made for the woman. Same qualifications. Why give qualifications if women can't be leaders? Right. I'm sorry, we take applications at our office, and there's qualifications for a job. And we don't say only men can, do this. We hire according to qualifications. Yeah. If you're not qualified and you're a man, you don't get the job. If you are qualified and you're a woman, you get the job. And then he goes on, serious, dependable, not sharp-tongued, not over fond of wine. Servants in the church are to be committed to their spouses, attentive to their own children, diligent to look after their own affairs. Those who do this servant work, that actually means they're doing something. Hello? Servant leaders will come to be highly respected. A real credit to this Jesus faith. This is what is going on. God is asking all of us to move into this. So here's the big question. Why did God give the man and the woman dominion if he meant for the woman to be subjugated? Do we believe that redemption was equal for everybody? Or do we believe it only redeemed the man and the woman gets to slide in if she bears enough children? No, I'm serious. We need to be able to ask on that. Our friend Archbishop Desmond Tutu said, I cannot be opposed to racism in which people are discriminated against as a result of something about which they can do nothing, their skin color, and then accept the equanimity, the gross injustice of penalizing others for something else they can do nothing about, their gender. We all understand skin color. Gender should be the same way. So, I don't know if any of you have heard the reasoning that the woman was the last to be created and the first to sin, and therefore she should not have a voice in the house of God. Well, there's a lot of doctrines that set things up like that women are easily deceived, and there shouldn't be leaders, and that Adam, we need to be like brave Adams and whatever. Okay, my Bible says through one man's sin. It doesn't say through Eve's. Okay, naughty Adam knew what he was doing. Eve was deceived. And even our law says when you do something knowingly, there is a stricter judgment than when you do something without knowledge. The Bible says that. But here's Romans 3. Here's the equalizer. For there is no difference. All have sinned. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, being justified freely by his grace through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus. We were justified freely so we can move freely, so we can live freely, so we can serve freely. You know what? A lot of us never asked to be leaders, and we became leaders by accident. You're not a leader unless people are following you, and sometimes people follow you without you asking them. But if people are following, then you better be leading well. You better be leading according to the qualifications and not disqualifying yourself because you're gender. You better actually be qualifying yourself because you develop virtue in your life. Because all of us actually, to be honest with you, people are watching us. They're watching us. And if you have a visible position, you're a leader. In the debate on Facebook, somebody said, it was a precious young girl. I could tell she was young because I went to her picture profile, because I was kind of like, who are these people? And she said, are you saying a pastor's wife isn't a leader? And they said, absolutely not. She is in no way a leader. She just has the honor of supporting her husband. I'm sorry? I think we talked about support systems are leaders, right? I mean, I'm sorry. I want a church that has a supportive leader. Yeah. I want a church that the leader is holding up the roof and the walls and everything that's going on. And if people are noticing her, if she is an example, then she's an example by leadership, a leader by example. But this is what Paul's saying. He said, don't, by the way, read too much into the differences here between men and women. Neither man nor woman can go it alone and claim priority. Man was created first as a beautiful, shining reflection of God. That's true. But the head on a woman's body clearly outshines in beauty the head of her head, her husband. The first woman came from a man, true. But ever since then, every man comes from a woman. And since virtually everything comes from God anyway, let's quit going through this who's first routine. Okay, I mean, they were doing it back then. Why haven't we come a little further on that? I also love Philippians 2, and it talks about, this is Paul, he's labored and he's labored and he's labored, and this is what he says, if you've gotten anything out of all following Christ, if this love, the love that we've experienced, that God's setting it right, has made any difference in your life, if being in the community of the Spirit means anything to you, if you have a heart, if you care, then do me a favor, agree with each other, love each other, be deep-spirited friends. Don't push your way to the front. Don't sweet talk your way to the top. Put yourself aside and help others get ahead. Don't be obsessed with getting your own advantage. Forget yourself long enough to lend a helping hand. So, wrapping it up because I have 30 seconds. Marriage is not a power struggle. It's a power union. Good leaders staff their weaknesses. Our differences highlight our need for one another. God thinks men and women together are amazing and persuasive and influential. All have sinned and fallen short, period. God is not looking for somebody to blame. He laid that blame on Jesus, and Jesus took it all completely for us. Men and women are equally redeemed. God alone deserves our worship. We cannot worship our gender. Feminine divine is not a healthy response to patriarchal. All right, we need to throw God's name wider. Both genders are allies and guardians, not enemies and gods. Don't read too much into the differences between men and women, because everything comes from God. So let's be women who navigate this well. Let's live it with our lives. Let's live it how we talk among each other. Let's watch how we laugh at things that make fun and dishonor men. Let's watch how we are inspired by things that appeals to the feminine divine in our life, or the goddess, or whatever. And again, I know that, like a Venus shaving commercial is not like what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the anger, because the response to what has been devaluing, what has been wrong, being worship is completely invalid. Let's be women that do this well. All right? Okay, awesome.